listening to Seminary Dropout, and I'm your host, Shane Blackshear. Somewhere in between seminary and youth camp, it's Seminary Dropout. Let's go. My guest today is Jefferson Bethke. He's the author of the New York Times bestseller, Jesus is Better Than Religion. Bethke's message connects at a heart level with an audience ranging from atheists to nationally recognized religious leaders. He lives in Maui, Hawaii, and he's here to talk about his new book, It's Not What You Think. Jefferson, thanks for being on the show.
Hey, how's it going, man?
It's going great. You grew up with a single mother, is that right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Did you go to church as a kid?
Yeah, the way I like to say it is definitely went enough to know the culture and I was basically a cultural Christian. I would have kind of called myself. I'm looking back on it now, but probably not enough either to I wouldn't say I was a church kid just because of having so much brokenness in the home and stuff like that. I don't feel I had this vision of what a church kid was, and I didn't think I was. But yeah, that was kind of how I grew up.
Do you remember how it came about when you decided that that was going to be kind of the defining thing in your life?
Jesus and church, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was in college. So freshman, sophomore year, I'd gotten to the place where I was kind of really not really caring about it anymore, kind of, I guess, just kind of passive about it, and had kind of just started to, live the very typical college lifestyle. And just through a string of events of life not going that well, and kind of God woke me up, really, and kind of said, you as the king of your own life doesn't end well, doesn't work well. And so, yeah, that was kind of when it happened, freshman year, and then I started really digging into the scriptures, and I just feel like I really encountered Jesus in a way I hadn't before up until that moment.
You're going to a secular college, right? Did you have Christian friends around you?
I was actually going to a Christian college that year.
Okay.
And then I transferred after that year to a non-Christian college. So yeah, I was able to kind of have enough community to really help me through the end of that year when it was happening, and then ended up transferring to play baseball at a different school after that. But yeah, it was an interesting transition.
Most people will know you from your YouTube video. You had done spoken word for a while and kind of had an interest in that for a long time. Is that right?
Yeah. So the Why I Hate Religion But Love Jesus video was only the second spoken word I had ever written in my entire life. I'd only written one or two for an open mic at my non-Christian college. And my buddy, who's a videographer, after we graduated, so this is 6 months to a year after college, was just oh, hey, let's make a YouTube video this weekend. I'm bored. And I was well, I don't really have anything to talk about, but I have these poems I did at college. And so we just did that. And that was really how it happened. So it was very accidental.
Well, I want to play a clip of that. This is Why I Hate Religion But Love Jesus. This got 1.6 million views in the first 24 hours and then 16 million after the first 2 weeks. And so, a lot of people are familiar with it, but I just wanted to play a clip real quick.
What if I told you Jesus came to abolish religion? What if I told you voting Republican really wasn't his mission? What if I told you Republican doesn't automatically mean Christian, and just because you call some people blind doesn't automatically give you vision? I mean, if religion is so great, why has it started so many wars? Why does it build huge churches but fails to feed the poor? Tell single moms God doesn't love them if they've ever had a divorce, but in the Old Testament, God actually calls religious people whores. Religion might preach grace, but another thing they practice, tend to ridicule God's people. They did it to John the Baptist. They can't fix their problems, and so they just mask it, not realizing religion's like spraying perfume on a casket. See, the problem with religion is it never gets to the core. It's just behavior modification, like a long list of chores. Let's dress up the outside, make it look nice and neat. But it's funny, that's what they used to do to mummies while the corpse rots underneath.
That video was widely received as a positive thing. I mean, I just gave the numbers. But anything that grabs people's attention on that level, there's going to be a rush. And in this case, a rush of very conservative and very progressive bloggers who kind of rush in to tell us how they're smart enough to see how there's actually something wrong with that thing. From your point of view, was it hard to hear the haters above the positive feedback you were getting at that time?
Yeah, so there's a lot of multifacets to this element. I would say one, it really was a huge lesson on praise of man, critique of man, because I really realized that I was at a space where I was putting a lot of identity in what other people thought about me. And you don't realize that until you're on the front page of a blog you read every day and the blog hates you, you know?
Yeah.
And you just don't realize it. And so it really was which I'm thankful for. It was painful, but it was like a quick uprooting rather than, it being 10 years or whatever, gradually me having to realize that. So it was really painful, but I'm thankful that the Lord did that when he did, because it was just so needed. And so there was that where I'm thankful to the critiques because most of them took me to that place. Two, some of the critiques had very helpful things to say. I mean, I was 22 at that point, didn't really know anything. And so I wanted to also have enough humility to be like, hey, yeah, I'm not like, do I really think I know everything at 22, And so I wanted to be able to take that. And so that was the hard part is sifting, I guess. The hard part's like, okay, what do I want to listen to and what's just hurtful, what's just damaging? And then the fourth multifaceted part is not to defend myself at all, but like I've been able to kind of stand back and study the internet per se and virality because I've been a part of it now. And the one annoying thing is, let me try to be realistic here. I'd probably say, 6 or 7 out of 10 of all the articles that were just, raging on me or whatever after the fact, I would probably just go as far as to say that they were probably just falling into the, oh, this has been really popular and liked for 2 days. Well, it's my turn to come in and bash it,
Yeah.
And that happens with everything. Like there's always 2 or 3 levels of virality, and that's usually what it is. It's usually, okay, people really like it. And then hold on. You guys are all like kind of the peons and you're not really looking deep into it, and then that's the critique. And then it's kind of just goes into the abyss after that. There's like usually 2 or 3 levels of that. And it happened with, the Invisible Children video, stuff like that, where you watch it and it's usually the first couple of days are people liking it. And then like after a few people have watched that, then they come out of the woodwork. And so then, but then there was a handful that were really helpful. So I guess that was my quick response to all the different levels. Yeah, it was sure an interesting ride that I don't ever wish to repeat because I don't think the human soul was created for that amount of spotlight.
Yeah.
Here's a weird thing to think about, but like before 10 years ago, no human in all of history has ever been able to have that much of concentrated eyeballs on them at any given point.
Yeah.
That's something we have to wrestle with. And I don't think we're wrestling with actually, which is why I think we're living in the, era of outrage per se, because we just don't know how to deal with it.
That's so fascinating. I mean, you can do whatever you do online from here on out, you're going to have a lot of eyeballs on you because of that video. And I mean, not to say that, the content that you've had since then isn't being meaningful, but you just got such a huge following from that. Do you do things to, I don't know, ground yourself, to remind yourself that the human psyche is not meant to take on that much?
Yeah, I mean, I think to some degree I'm lucky that it happened so fast because, and this is just again, I kind of like to study culture, and I feel like I've seen this, sometimes with pastors or whatever. When there's a falling out or when there's something that happens to someone, you can sometimes see that it happened because their ministry grew gradually, and so they were able to not see that the growth was all God's grace and all his sovereignty. They were able to take credit. But I'm somewhat lucky because it happened so fast. I mean, 2 or 3 days, that like I would just be an idiot to think that I manufactured this, like I'm responsible for this, not at all. And so to some degree that's helpful because it always is able to remind me that it's such a crazy gift. I mean, like, let's be honest, it's a really weird life I live where my entire life is thankful and responsible to a 4-minute and 52-second video. That's a really weird thing to say. And honestly, like everything I do now was a trajectory that was started from that video. And that's really weird to think about, but also allows me to be super thankful. And then obviously that really, really obvious ones of just, I mean, the way I like to say it is I think if you're in any public sphere, whether it's small, big, whatever, like you have to fight the temptation to surround yourself with friends, not fans, like people who really know you, who see past the like cropped, edited version of yourself and really know your struggles, your failures. And so surrounding myself with those kind of people, not only my age, but also mentors above me, yeah, that's just invaluable, I think.
You made that video in college, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, like right after college. Yeah. 6 months.
What were you doing at that point in life? Did you have a 9 to 5 or?
Yeah, I was working. I was like a 7 to 4, I think. But I was working at just a community center doing after school sports. I was teaching kids how to play soccer, which is hilarious because I like never played past middle school. But yeah, that's what I was doing.
The common thread that I see in your work from that original video to the book that's just going to be released in October, the common thread I see is that there's been a lot of false advertising in Christianity, that the good news has somewhat been hijacked and represented in culture as something that's not. And it's like the people that I talk to say they could never be a Christian. And when you ask them why, They describe a God who's none of us think is really a great guy,
Yeah.
and not the God of the Bible, and certainly
Yeah.
not a God that looks like Jesus.
Yeah.
It seems like that's something that's really grabbed your attention.
Yeah. Yeah. I think maybe that's because how my video started, or that's the trajectory I started with. But yeah, I do feel like kind of the heartbeat or the pulse of behind everything that me and my wife like to do, whether it's a podcast, a video, a book, e-course, whatever, just anything that comes out of our hands usually has an element of us trying to not reframe or reshape Jesus, because you can't reframe or reshape God, but trying to, I guess, pull away the clutter so that then people can see him rightly, because that's been my own journey. My own journey has had to be putting away so much baggage and so much false views of who God is, what the scriptures are, what the narrative of human history is according to scripture, who Jesus is. And so I think that's anything that comes out of us. We try to do that, try to say, what if the reason you said no to Jesus is probably, like what you said, not even like who he is in the first place? And so can we get to that space? And if you want to say no, go ahead. I don't think it'll lead to joy or life. But if we can get to an accurate picture first, then I think that'd be helpful.
One of the great quotes in the book is you said, at what point is a religion only wrong in a few areas, but still the same belief system? And at what point is a religion so unrecognizable to its founders that they call it a different religion entirely? And have we reached that point in Western Christianity?
Not a small question at all, right?
Oh my gosh, it's so good.
Yeah, I mean, and that one's 100% hypothetical. Like, we can only speculate. But that is something that I, sit at night and think about. Like, is Western American Christianity so infected by the Enlightenment, or just even Western way of thinking and all the baggage that comes with evangelicalism sometimes? Like, is all that stuff kind of been stewed in a pot and kind of created something that Paul and Peter, if they just hopped in the DeLorean and came 2,000 years into the future, like, would they recognize it? Like, would Paul write us a letter? Like, would it be like First and Second Americans? And he's like really is he critiquing us really heavily? Or is he actually like, are we Acts 17 where he's trying to like convert us?
Wow.
I don't know. I can only speculate on that. But I would say some of the things are so high level worldview, framework, foundational stuff that, yeah, there might be some stuff where he'd be like, hey, we got to start over here, but I don't know. That's 100% speculative, but I think it's a really question we have to wrestle with, because then all that does is allow us to see the problem rightly, that obviously the answer to either one of those is just continually running after Jesus full force, full heart, and trying to see him correctly.
Well, I think it's such an important question because, like you alluded to, it's the water we swim in, it's the culture around us. And we would say, we are the church, like we are the progression of the early church in the Bible. But we've got all this other, like you said, this junk around us, from Enlightenment, Americanism, all that kind of stuff. Growing up in evangelicalism, our line about the Mormon religion, because Mormons, would intellectually say, yeah, I follow Jesus too, blah, blah, blah. The line we give about them is that it's so far in practice away from Christianity that it's really not the same thing. And it's so interesting to turn that same question in on ourselves and ask, are we so far away from what it was really about that is it exactly the same thing? I think it's really helpful.
Yeah, I feel like we turn that question outward, like you said, a lot, when it should be one that's inward, or at least one that we do both with, for sure.
Exactly. And it's also, there's a humility to it. Like, we're not taking it for granted that we've got it right,
Yeah, well, I think I talk about, what is it, the last chapter, the table chapter, where the worst thing we can ever do is, have a framework and then say, I believe these facts, so then I'm good to go, rather than, no, every time it can't self-terminate. The finish line has to be a relationship with your creator, with Jesus, continually trying to pursue him more.
One of the chapters you talk about Sabbath, and you bring up that in the Bible in Exodus, we get a second reason for Sabbath. So, early in the Bible, we've got, it's the day of rest. And then in Exodus, they attribute the reason to remind the Jews that they are free people. So when you're a slave, you don't get the seventh day off.
Yeah.
Your master doesn't care. And so the reason that they have Sabbath is to be reminded that they're free. And placing that on top of our narrative today, when we tend to be so enslaved to things, whether it's our illegal addictions or our harmful addictions of TV and cell phones and all those kind of things, Sabbath is a great way to break us from those things, from those addictions, and remind us that we too are free if we choose to be.
Totally. And a lot of that chapter came from inspired. I've read a lot of books on Sabbath, but the one that was really the heartbeat of that one was Sabbath as Resistance by Walter Brueggemann.
Yeah.
And love that book, one of my favorite books. And yeah, just I love how he just gets to the bullseye of like, it's really about commodification. Like, Egypt was all about brick making, but Yahweh was different. He was antithetical to Pharaoh and Pharaoh's values and principles. And, and it's about being a human being, not a human doing. And so I think today we have to contextualize that and say, what does it take? Sabbath is not about just watching football and doing landscaping, on your day off. I think that's actually, depending on how you do it, I think that could actually be the opposite of Sabbath. I really think it's, what does it take to remind yourself one day a week that you're free? And for us, we try really hard, and we're still working on it because we, especially with our schedule not being a 9 to 5, my wife's, we try to figure out, okay, do we do the same day? Do we pick a different day? And sometimes we accidentally miss it because of that. So we're still trying to work through it. But one of the biggest things we do is when we do Sabbath and when we do try to find that rhythm all the time, especially as a new family now with a baby girl, us is phones off. Or at least, no, this is actually what's fascinating is for me, it's phone off. For my wife, it isn't, because she doesn't really, she's tweeted once in the last 2 years, so
yeah. That's not what work is for her.
Exactly. She doesn't care. She doesn't, to her, turning her phone off doesn't remind her that she's free because she doesn't feel enslaved when it's on, And so for me, to remind myself I'm free, I turn it off. And that's a huge thing for us. And so I think you have to ask that question. What does it take to remind yourself that you're a free person according to Jesus, and you're under his reign and his rule? And I think when you start digging into that, you'll know very quickly what that answer is.
I'm curious if vocational ministry was something that you saw in your future when you went to college.
No, not entirely. I majored in politics and government. That's what my bachelor's is in. I wanted to be a lawyer, but then I realized that was too much school. So then I just wanted to be a government high school teacher. And then I just took some time off before I went to get my master's in education and worked at the community center. And then that's when everything blew up. So it's kind of, not really, I guess. And then what we do now is what I do really enjoy, just kind of more creating stuff in the internet world. I really enjoy writing and all that kind of stuff.
Because we do this a lot in Christianity. I'm curious if after you came out with the YouTube video, if you had people putting on you maybe a level of theological education that you didn't have and wanting to put you in places and positions that maybe you weren't ready for yet, that you didn't want to be in.
Yeah, and that's the toughest thing with me, being 26, I refuse to say that I'm some authority just because, the weird thing about our world now is we equate authority with social following, and that's just not the case. That's just not,
especially in spiritual issues, in the spiritual realm, and theological issues. Yeah.
Yeah. There's pastors in, Timbuktu who have, not even a Twitter at all that I would really like to listen to, but no one is because they're not even heard of. And so there's a weird tension there where social following does not mean influence or authority. And so, I just try to work really hard to show that. It usually plays out a lot in events where if I do a Q&A or something like that, I just refuse to always have an answer for everything. There's so many times where they'll ask me a question and I say, you know what? I don't know the answer to that. I don't feel comfortable giving an answer to that. And I don't feel like I'm an authority to give an answer to that. And I do that probably at least once every Q&A time I do. And that's just a reminder to me and to them, this, just because I'm up here with a microphone, doesn't mean that I know everything. I can speak on what I do know, but I don't, same thing with marriage. A lot of people, me and my wife do a lot of relationship stuff, but I have to really try hard to if I've been married 3 years, I can't really give much marriage advice, and so we try to really concentrate more on dating and more high school, college, just the season that we are out of. How can I speak into that? And so that's, what we try to do.
People probably also want to treat you like a licensed professional counselor, especially when you're talking about issues of marriage and things like that.
Yeah. And that's one of my biggest things too, is there's a lot of things that we email people who we think we like a lot, or that we have a lot of social influence, that really that question should be for your pastor in your local church because they know you, that's really what, I agree with that big time.
Man, that's so good. Yeah. Cause that sense of community that we've lost so badly.
Totally.
Man, good for you. Well, Jefferson, man, I wish we could talk longer, but thank you so much for being on Seminary Dropout today.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. And sorry it was a little shorter. Hopefully we'll hopefully do a part 2 sometime in the future or something.
I'd love to, man. I'd love to.
Yeah.
All right.
Hey,
Take care.
Thank you so much, man.
Thanks for joining me for another episode of Seminary Dropout. Remember, you can find all the show notes for this show and all shows at shaneblackshear.com. Oh, and hey, have you ever thought about starting your very own podcast? I bet you have. And I think you should do it. In fact, I've created a course just for you to teach you everything that I've learned over the last couple of years producing Seminary Dropout. So if you're interested in podcasting and want to learn how, go check out my course. You can go there by typing in podcastingforeveryone.org. And you can get a special discount by typing in the discount code Seminary Dropout, all one word. That'll give you 25% off. So go check it out. If you have any questions, let me know. Okay. Thanks to those that left ratings and reviews on iTunes this week. Remember, that keeps the show front and center. Also, remember, you can find me on Twitter at beardonabike. That's at beardonabike. Also, I'm on Facebook, facebook.com/ShaneBlackshear123. And remember that Seminary Dropout is listener supported. You can visit supportseminarydropout.com and press Become a Patron. Remember, this music you're listening to right now is by D.L. Rossi. You can find him online on iTunes and at dlrossi.com. All right, thanks again for joining me for another episode of Seminary Dropout. Stay tuned for next week's episode. Love you. Take care.
But there's still hope for me. This great